everybody, to the Dad Bodds Podcast, episode number 79. And we have two of the dads joining us. I am Guns Picks, and to the right, if you're watching at home, the Odds Fellow has joined us. What's going on, my friend? NBA playoffs tonight. How you feeling?
The play-in has started. The first round is coming. What a great time of year. I love this. I'm enjoying it. I'm ready. I got the Nets hat on, the buy hat, as one of our guests likes to say. This is the buy hat. We'll get into that later. But yeah, I mean, great time. Baseball, Masters just happened. It's spring is in the air. Like, this is the best, right?
It really is the best. It is a prime time. It is an underrated prime time for gambling in general, because you have all the playoffs going to be starting, NHL, NBA. You have the Kentucky Derby coming up. You have
the Derby.
Boxing, and UFC is always having a fight week to week. But I mean, we have a full jam-packed show, so I mean, we have no time to waste. So let's just get to the sponsor real quick, and then we can bring in our electric guests all together. So let's give it up to the sponsor.
This podcast is sponsored by Viva Tequila Seltzers.
That's right. From the promo, we have our sponsor, Viva Tequila Seltzer. Viva is a refreshing and drinkable hard seltzer. 88 calories, 0 carbs, 0 sugar, and 4.5 ABV. Viva is a perfect drink for your NBA playoff celebrations, as it was created for the active life in mind. Viva flavors and tequila seltzers, because flavor is the spice of life, and they like their drinks with a kick, just like we like to live our lives. Viva flavors they pairs perfectly with artisanal Blanco tequila for our subtle and refreshing drinks. Their belief is to live long, live well, and live it up. Hashtag Viva Up, and check them out on Twitter at Viva Seltzers. And let's get into a little NBA mode, shall we? Let's start off with our first guest. He is the number one capper in 2020-2021 season. I'm sure he's had an electric season this season as well. And at Sports Memo, you can see him as a regular on the NBA Talk with J Money is Money. You can see him on the Triple Double Show with John Ryan Sports. You can call him Ron. You can call him Kabang. Just don't call him late for dinner. Ladies and gentlemen, the first time on the Dad Bodds Podcast, at you, Capper. What's going on, my friend? Welcome to Dad Bodds.
What's good? I'm glad to be here. Excited, man. I'm excited to be on this panel with you guys. I mean, you guys are awesome. I see you guys' show. You guys doing it big.
That's you also awesome. Fit the dad profile, so it works. It fits nice.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Yeah,
fellow dad joined us.
You'll probably hear my kids like yelling in the background pretty soon when they're brushing their teeth.
That's white noise. I don't even notice.
Yeah, most of us on the East Coast. My kids are dead asleep. Let's hope. We might have a visitor. Doesn't matter. Just like Oddfellows had his on previous podcast. Mm-hmm. But we have to introduce our next guest. He is a regular on the Dad Bodds Podcast, and you can also see him on NBA Talk with J Money is Money. A beloved regular on the Dad Bodds Podcast. You may see his vibes on at Shark in Sports on Twitter, and he is coming off a plus 96 unit regular season. That is a 68% hit rate. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, give it up for Shocky Waters Nation. What's going on, my friend?
96 units. And a beautiful season it is. 10:20 p.m. Wednesday. We got a game going on right now. Pelicans in a sweat. Ronald Kabang in the chat. Guns Picks. College football in the fall. Odds Fellow 21K views. I believe on a suddenly not so casual weekday. Weeknight it is. We got 6 series to preview here. Guns, lead us into it, and let's discuss all 6 series. Top looks, top props, top angles, dynamics, and all the things you guys want to hear. Sharky Waters Nation. Now it's a lifestyle. Ride the way we're going to water. Let's dominate.
I think the best thing to do is, I want to start with the best in the West. I think the West is going to be competitive. I mean, the East is going to be competitive too, but I want to start with one of the matchups here. Let's start with the Dallas Mavericks versus the Utah Jazz. Now, I know there's some injury concerns on the Mavericks side, but I'm going to start with you, Capper. What do you think is going to happen in this series? What are you seeing, at least in game one?
Yeah, this one's a tough one because, like, if we're talking just game one here, we're still seeing Mitchell dealing with illness. He sat out the last game. We don't know if he's going to play. Luca obviously is the biggest one on the Dallas side, and even Kleber. Kleber's status is always is up in the air as well. And looking at this game here, both of the teams, the home teams won in the regular season, and Luca at home, he dominated those 2 games at home, and that's the 2 games that they won. So without him, it's going to be tough. And they're starting the season, they're starting the series at home. So that's going to be a big thing to watch here. As far as like post All-Star break, Mavs were dominating. They were dominating the post All-Star break, 17-6 straight up. Post All-Star break, I think that might have been maybe first or second the best record post All-Star break. But obviously Luca is the big status update that we need to keep track of.
Yeah, and jumping off that, I mean, I think unfortunately, as we go into this first round of playoffs and the first day of games, Saturday, April 16th, 2 of the games, both in the West, completely contaminated from a prognostication standpoint by injury. Luka Doncic and Steph Curry. What's going on? And it's hard to put out an official play on this. I mean, you can track the line. The line is, of course, all over Utah. Utah did just get hammered 114-100 at a +6.5 figure going back to March 27th. And that was, of course, as Ronald suggested, in a period of the season where the Jazz just could not win a road game. And they would get up huge. They were up huge in that game. They were up double digits in the first half and just melted it off. They've been inconsistent all year. There's been a lot of tabloid speculation, as we've noted numerous times. We don't know how much that's a narrative just to get a click or if it's real stuff between Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell potentially not wanting to play together long term. Of course, if Luka doesn't play here, you get the ultimate Ciroc on ice. Is P. Diddy traveling with the team plane of the Utah Jazz to basically suck all competitive and motivational flow out of the group? You want to take the Jazz here. If Luka doesn't play, theoretically, they should win this in 5 going away. But again, of all the series, this is just hard to predict because of this injury. Anthony Latino, comments, please.
Just to close it out, I think this was one of the games series potential matchups as the seeding was starting to come out that I had circled last week, because you look at those last 2 matchups, the home games that Ronald mentioned, victories kind of running away, an 8-point game and a 14-point game for the Mavs. Those were the 2 games. There was the 3rd game in there right after the Porzingis trade. But those 2 matchups in March were really when that Mavs team was rounding into form, and you saw the differences between these 2 teams. Tough to back without Luka. What you could do here potentially, if health news for him turns around and comes back, 1 game, 1 loss doesn't matter completely in a 7-game series. You could get great value on Mavs coming back the other way if they do get shellacked and you take Utah -4.5 in game 1.
Well, there you have it for the first game of many going into this one. Now we're going to go into the 3 and 6 seed in this one, and you have the Golden State Warriors making the return. Curry hitting threes from anywhere on the court, going against the Denver Nuggets. I'm going to pass it to you, Capper, first. What do you think how this series is going to play out?
Yeah, like Shark mentioned, the status of Curry is super, super important in this one. If we're looking at each game here, Nuggets won by 3 in the first matchup. Nuggets were without a whole bunch of guys there. And on the Warriors side, obviously, Thompson was out in the beginning of the season. No Green or Poole either in that matchup. And then the next game, the Nuggets beat the Warriors here. No Green, no Iggy, no Toscano Anderson off the bench. Thompson was just, I think, back in the lineup for a few games there. And then they had Peyton starting, and Poole was struggling with the move to the bench. The next game again, Nuggets by 7. Jokic had a triple-double. Warriors without Wiggins, Green, Payton, Iggy, Thompson, Curry. There was like nobody on the Warriors that game. And then a few days later, Warriors finally get the first W against the Nuggets. They end up winning by 9. Jokic did nearly get another triple-double. And the Warriors were still missing key players, but Poole adjusted to his new role finally. Kuminga was actually getting accustomed to his role off of the bench. So they were doing a really great job of adjusting, in my opinion. And then I think here really the key status injury of Curry. Is he going to play that first game? That's the thing to look into here. But I mean, post All-Star break, Nuggets really have an advantage as far as playing offense their offensive camaraderie, their team being together for the most part. That's the only thing that I could see that they have a leg up on. The Warriors defense has always stayed true to themselves throughout the season, and they stayed a defensive unit post All-Star break with all the injuries that they dealt with. So to me, it's a balanced series here, but definitely Curry is the guy that we need to look into.
Yeah, jumping off that again, I think this is just hard to predict from an ATS standpoint, game to game. I think when we really look at this series, this is potentially a 7-game series here. And I don't have the exact numbers. I'm betting that in front of me, but I do think if you guys want to take just even like a quarter unit small flyer, and I know people love to do this stuff in the playoffs. Of course, the first round does have a lot of accessibility game to game. As you get in the second round, within 3 or 4 weeks here, gentlemen, we're not going to have a lot of NBA basketball to bet on. And, when we get down to the conference finals and the finals, there's one game a day. In the finals, there's one game every third day for 2 weeks. It's going quickly, so I know people want a lot of action. A lot of these implied odds, how many games will be played, series finals, have incredible value. And I think there's a couple. We're going to talk about one in the Eastern Conference. Ronald and I were just talking about off the record. But I think this is a 7-game series waiting to happen. I don't think it's going to necessarily be fluid. I don't think it's going to be all the home teams win. I think there will be back and forth. I think the Dubs will steal one in Denver. I think Denver could possibly steal 1 or 2 in Golden State. They could steal game 1. Again, without Steph Curry, we're not sure there. If we look back this season at what happened in Golden State slightly earlier this year, interesting stuff. Denver caught Golden State in the ultimate trap game. It was the game after Christmas, 3 days removed, December 28th. The Dubs had just beaten Phoenix on the road, which at that point in the year was one of, if not the biggest regular season wins for any team. And they came back off that huge high, and they came out just ultra flat. They were down 20 points in the first half, tried to come back, lost again 89-86. Second one, February 16th, 2022, total game flow reversal. Dubs had just gotten insulted, took note of that, came out blazing hot, but melted the game in the fourth quarter, 39-30 Nuggets. Did proceed to lose another one at the Nuggets before getting them 113-102. Again, I think if you guys want to sprinkle here, maybe not even quarter unit, 1/10 unit, 0.15, whatever you want to call it, 7-game series is a great bet here. And comments?
Yeah, you could bet it 2 ways. I can't find, at least on DraftKings, poking around while the shark is pontificating to giving you guys some knowledge and some data and some ways to approach this, which I love. So I can't find a series total games. Those lines are out for a couple of these series. It's not actually out for Denver and Golden State right now, but series correct score, which means you could bet this 2 ways if you go with that 7-game series. Golden State to win 4-3 is plus 300. Denver to win 4-3 plus 750. You manage your bankroll the right way, and you could sprinkle on both of those and still come out profitable, right? So a little bit of fun. I mean, one thing that's telling to me, and I just want to get Shark's comments on this real quick before we jump to another, is the line here to me on the opening game is a little telling. I know there's some uncertainty with Curry, but it's Golden State sitting -6. That would tell you that they're kind of pointing to expecting, thinking he's going to play, right? Otherwise, that line would be nowhere near that number.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're not trying to give you 6 free points here on Denver.
Right.
But, of course, the tough thing to cap on that is he hasn't played since, I believe, March 16th when I believe Marcus Smart dove at his ankle on a national game. And that was a storyline that particular day, dirty or not. He has been out for what will be, I believe, exactly 1 month, April 16th, this game being played 8:30 Pacific time. We talk about this every single day. If he comes back, yeah, the line is average for him to play, but what kind of flow are they going to have? I mean, all year this has been a problem. Draymond Green was out for a period of time. They were really poor playing basketball. Klay Thompson, obviously, off a 2.5-year injury. These three, the big three, have never really gotten any sustained on-court flow. So now you bring Curry back again. I would lean even stronger to Denver there, actually, to go in there and maybe not steal it. I mean, but definitely cover the spread. Of course, this is not an official play, you guys in the chat. Not an official play right now. All speculation as we discuss this. These will be, of course, dropped the day of the game. But definitely great stuff here.
Absolutely. So, look, let's go to the last Western Conference matchup here that we're going to talk about. We're going to skip the 1-8s, just given the uncertainty about the play-in. I don't think any of us are overly concerned about the 1 seeds getting through things against some of those 8 optional matchups. But the last one here is a really interesting series, and I know we're going to kick to Shark first. I know 2 teams he's been high on throughout the season, 2 young guns that actually get matched up here early against the first round. I think it's almost unfortunate that we get these guys going at each other versus trying to attack the old guard, maybe some of those more veteran, experienced teams that have done there. Instead, you get Memphis and Minnesota going toe-to-toe. Two surprises maybe in the Western Conference for slightly different reasons. Minnesota was partying like it was 1999 last night with Patrick Beverley going off like they won the NBA title. But hey, this team just broke a huge playoff drought to get back here into the mix, into the Western Conference playoffs. Shark, what are you seeing? Memphis, Minnesota series, game one, anything standing out?
Yeah, 3:30 here on the Eastern time zone on Saturday afternoon. Just as a real narrative point, psychological 101, when you have that big of a win, of course, Patrick Beverley, it was a personal thing. He got cut from the Clippers. I guess it didn't go down the way he wanted to. He certainly made that very apparent in the post game, if not on court, in the locker room. Profanity-laced Instagram rant, which, personally I back. I love the competitive nature. And I think it's just a large-scale point about sports. It's become way too easy to say, be nice. This is pro sports. You got to be a dog. You got to fight. You got to want to win. That's animosity. It's adrenaline. I love to see the adrenaline. Patrick Beverley, one of my favorite players in the league, just personifies grit and hard-nosed on-court professionalism. And but when you look at this game and you come in here, again, not official, but one of the best looks, I believe, on this card on Saturday probably will be Memphis at -6.5. Memphis, of course, well noted all year. Trifecta nation, man. They come out first quarter ready to blow you out, and they do not let up the whole game. Speaking of blowing you out and not letting up the whole game, Minnesota did hammer them 138-95 2 times ago, and also did cover the most recent one, 119-114, the first game after the All-Star break, which I had incorrectly. I had Memphis there that day. The games this year at Memphis have been very tight on the number. 116-108 Memphis, covered by, I believe, a hook or one, and 128-118 early season November 8th, cover the same thing, I believe 6.5 there. This is the same number. They are 2-0 on this number. I do think, however, on a matinee where Minnesota has shown the inability to travel well at an early tip time, off the huge high to kick off a 7-game series against arguably the most professional group in the league in a revenge game, Memphis is probably the best early look on this card. Ronald?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Memphis is the play for the early game, for at least for the first game of the series. I mean, both for this matchup here, the home teams have won each game. The interesting note on that Wolves game, that when they beat the Grizzlies by 43, there was no Melton, no Brooks. I mean, that's not a big deal, right? Because they didn't have Brooks for a while. There was a key change on the Wolves team, where Vanderbilt was put into the starting lineup. That kind of changed the dynamic of how the Wolves started to play defensively. And then they also caught the Grizz in a sandwich spot. They just beat the Clippers by 12 when they still had Paul George. This is before he got injured. Then they had the Jazz up next when the Jazz were also running pretty hot. So they caught them in a pretty bad spot there. So sometimes you just want to kind of cross those games off in some points. And then the Grizzlies also, they're really great in these revenge spots. And obviously the Wolves won the last one at home. And post All-Star break, both of these teams were killing it. The Grizzlies 5-7 straight up, Wolves 15-8 straight up. I think that the biggest difference here is the defense. The Grizzlies have been a strong defensive team throughout the year, especially in the second half of the season. Post All-Star break, second in defensive rating here. And interesting to note is they're second in net rating, only to the Celtics too. And then the Wolves, they're not far behind. They're fourth in net rating. So these guys, like you mentioned, I think the youth here is what keeps these guys close together. Both teams are just having fun. They're playing hard. They're having fun at the same time. And that's kind of the hard part of this. Like Osfellow was saying, it's like, I wish this wasn't the first round match, because these guys would be awesome to watch down the road. To me, though, I think the Grizzlies take it. I think the Grizzlies should be able to take this series.
And I don't hate, before we kick it over to Guns, the series bets here are interesting too. Grizzlies -1.5 is sitting at -135 on DraftKings. That protects you against the sweep, the 4-1, the 4-2. I think this probably lands Grizzlies in 5, maybe Grizzlies in 6. I'm a little tempted by the exact score, Grizzlies 4-2 plus 360. But again, you're getting those odds as a little bit more of a long shot, because you could take that and then they end up winning 4-1, the gentleman's sweep. So some things to look up.
And just one comment on that. I think that's actually a great bet. I really do. I see Memphis winning this in 6, 4-2, and there's no need to elaborate on that. You just have to go through the games, and you have to figure that Minnesota is going to probably win 2 at home. They won 2 at home in the regular season. And, as Ronald said, even though there were qualifiers as to why Memphis played so poorly in those games, technically there's a qualifier why they would play poorly in the playoffs. You're going to an opponent's gym in a desperation game, and you're going to get that energy that you saw in the last game that Minnesota played against the Clippers. I think 4-2 here plus 360 is a great bet. Again, maybe go quarter unit on it, but I would definitely advise on that.
Yeah. All right, Guns, take us to the
Great stuff there. And I guess that's going to be the series to watch. Now we're going to go head into the East, but we're going to skip the one as we've done in the West. We're going to be going to the 4 and 5 matchup here, where you have the Philly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Sixers going against Toronto. My left stroke went viral. Shout out, Drake. The Raptors should be a good series, but I'm going to pass it to Shark first. What do you think is going to happen in this spot?
Buy hat incoming.
Sixers in 7. Sixers in 7. I see you guys in Philly. I see Philly chirping their baseball players. Alec Boehm, I fucking hate this place. Shouting the people. I like Philly. I like people in Philly. I like street grinders. I like people that care. That's a key point. I like people that care. And you know who cares in this matchup? One player, Joel Embiid. The rest of their roster, I don't know what to say here. But Joel Embiid is that good of a player, an absolute top 4 player in the league right now. I think he will get them over the hump over the Raptors. I think it's going to go 7. And I will put on record again, I think quarter unit play here, sprinkle, 4-3 will be a really, really sharp look. I think that will go to the end 2 weeks down the road, a Game 7 in Philly, probably a matinee, probably a hell of a game to watch. Ronald and I were discussing this off the record. The Raptors are 4-0 ATS this season against Philadelphia. That will probably reverse itself, although Philadelphia is razor sharp on the number. This series, in my opinion, will be a series that you're probably going to want to target quarters and halves. The game flow trends will definitely flip home to away. And I'm going to throw it back to Anthony here, and then he can throw it to Ronald. I know that one thing you really want to talk about was the fact that Tybalt will not be able to play in Canada due to something we know as COVID that I thought was no longer an issue, but maybe it is. Anthony.
I still don't know if it's 2020, 21, or 2022 because COVID has caused a complete time lapse. But interesting here. Tybalt will not be able to make the trips. And, as a Nets fan, I analyzed this trade that happened between Harden and Simmons and the Sixers and the Nets, with a lot of scrutiny. And one thing that surprised me a lot, and we'll touch on this a little bit during the Nets series too, the Sixers gave up a lot of depth to make that move, right? It wasn't just Simmons and draft picks for Harden. It was Drummond and it was Curry, which means that, Maxey and Tybalt and those other pieces that they have that they didn't get back from the Nets to replace that depth become all the more important. So I think when you lose that piece, it's going to be really interesting. Luckily, they do have and maintain home court. So that Game 7, that all-important Game 7 that Shark talked about, is still back in Philadelphia where he can play. But 3 games that he can't. In the last matchup, they lost this game before we jump to Ronald, 119-114. Again, he did not make that trip. Van Vliet did not play in that game. And the Raptors still got it done. And I think, I know, Ronald, you have some good data on how the Raptors performed against the Sixers throughout the year.
Yeah, so Raptors 3-1 straight up and 4-0 against the spread, like Shark mentioned. I think one thing here to know is in that first game that the Raptors won, there was no Embiid. They only won by 6 points. And then on the second game, the Sixers won the second matchup by 5 with Embiid, but the Raptors were missing Van Vliet, Precious, Anunoby, and Barnes. That's pretty much their majority of their starting lineup there. Then the Raptors beat the Sixers in the third matchup by 5. This time only without Anunoby and Van Vliet. And then Raptors win again, like Oswald mentioned, is that last game by 5 as home dogs. No Matisse for the Sixers, Van Vliet and Anunoby out. I think Van Vliet is going to be able to play this series. And for them to be successful without him during the season, it's kind of tough to see how this game flow is going to go, right? That's one thing that I need to really see, because when Van Vliet was out, they had this long, lengthy lineup that they had to kind of take care of guys like Maxey. And then another thing to think about too, from a betting standpoint, like you guys were mentioning, is Matisse can't go to Toronto, and that everyone's going to be like, oh well, the defense out of the window, right? But you gotta think about how many points is he worth defensively? Because if they adjust it too high or too low or whatever it might be, you could take advantage of that really. And so that's one thing to think about from a betting aspect on the total point is how much do they adjust Matisse in that point. But I agree with Sharkman. I think this one's going to go 7 games. That's the way that I think is going to go.
Yeah,
Great
I
stuff.
certainly lean that way, and I'm excited to watch that one.
Great stuff. And I'm getting a lot of comments in the chat that Sharks hat game is always strong, especially with the 76ers hat. Getting a lot of comments in this one.
That's
but we're
the
gonna
Allen
move on.
Iverson era 76ers.
The
by the way.
AI.
This
the
is-
killer
this is-
crossover.
This is the era of stepping over the most experienced, best coach in the sport, Tyronn Lue, according to local sources last night.
That's right.
Let's go. So we're going to move on to the 3-6 matchup in the East. We're talking the Milwaukee Bucks going against the Chicago Bulls. A lot of people are saying that Chicago is tanking, even though they're a playoff team. Shark, what do you think of this matchup?
Well, one red hat to the next, but we like green money in the center here. We have an official play dropped going back about 4.5 days. Of course, this is not the same play. It got steamed probably because it was the sharpest look on the board. This is Milwaukee Bucks minus 2.5 games at minus 125. Of course, it was at minus 200. It could be even higher there. So, of course, that's up to you guys, your discretion if you want to lay it.
There's a minus 170 out there on DraftKings, a little bit better.
Okay, so a little bit of a buyback there. I don't know who's taking Chicago Bulls to buy that back, but bless you for it. Thank you for that. But what you're looking at here is just an outclassed team. Milwaukee's 4-0 on the season straight up, 3-1 ATS. Milwaukee just coasted most of the season, and they still are the 2 seed or the 3 seed, whatever it is. And they're just a team that has been waiting around knowing that for a few years in a younger Giannis generation, they overexerted themselves in the regular season and capped out in the playoffs. Last year, they learned, don't burn yourself out for 82, chill out a little bit. And what happened? They won the title. And this year in the East, it is wide open. This is the definition of professional parity at the top of a conference. It's hard to pick a winner, but I will say in this first round, Chicago Bulls caught fool's gold against the spread for about 40 games. They have cratered. They've had injuries. No ball, Levine in and out, DeMar DeRozan MVP status, hitting buzzer beaters from 3 back-to-back games. Nonsense, outliers, garbage when it comes to this series. Milwaukee will probably get there 4-1, but they will definitely cover this at minus 2.5. That's the official play. Again, using discretion, guys, on the price. Ronald Kabang, a banger, please.
Yeah, man. I think the Bulls can probably steal at least one of these because looking through the game logs through this season between the two teams, I think the Bucks really caught the Bulls in a whole bunch of bad spots here. Because if you think about the first loss, and they only lost by 4. Bulls didn't have Levine, Pat Williams, Ball, or Javonte Green. And then in the second game, they lost by 6. No Caruso, no Williams, no Ball. And then on the third game, obviously they got dominated there. They lost by nearly 30. But this was a tough schedule spot for them. They facing the Jazz in Utah, the Suns in Phoenix, Raptors at home. First game of back-to-back. Then they go to Milwaukee on the second game of back-to-back. So that was another tough spot as far as schedule-wise. And then Bulls lost that fourth matchup by 21. No Lonzo, no Levine. First game of back-to-back. Celtics up next. Possibly a look ahead there. So those are little things that I saw that could probably gave me like a little inkling that they could probably steal at least one of those. But their current form, the Bulls have been struggling without Lonzo Ball. They don't have a true playmaker here. 25th in offensive rating and 25th in defensive rating in a post All-Star break, and that has to do with Lonzo Ball not being there as a playmaker. And secondly, defensively, they didn't have him there either, and Caruso has been hurt for a majority of the second post All-Star break. And those were the 2 key guys that was really holding their defense together in the beginning of the season. So I do agree. I think Bucks take this by at least 2.5. Like you said, 2.5 is the spread. I definitely think they could do that, but I do think the Bulls can probably take at least one of those games.
Yeah, Patrick Williams coming back is going to be interesting for this team because you get him into the mix a little bit. Is it too little too late? Probably. I think one thing you hit on that people underestimate and don't think about because the names aren't the flashiest, especially with Caruso, but Caruso and Ball on the defensive side of the ball were complete difference makers for this team early on, and until those injuries happened, and then you really saw that struggle in the second half of the season. So, here, just a quick education point before we go to the last series. We were talking about, Bucks -2.5 or Bucks in 5, right? If the Bulls slide 1. This is why it's important to shop around and look at this from different angles. If you look on DraftKings, Milwaukee Bucks to win the series 4-1 is plus 190. Milwaukee Bucks, Chicago Bulls, exact series games, 5 games, plus 185. Those little things matter long-term as you're betting, right? Big doesn't seem like a huge difference, but again, find the best odds, the best way you can take the same bet. It's literally the same bet, and move forward that way. So,
yeah, and just one final point here. If you really go through recent history, of course, this is a different roster, but we talk about trends. Milwaukee has won 16 out of the last 17 games against Chicago. That is flat ownership of a team within the division.
It's crazy.
And that is just, it speaks to this bet just being absolute gold at -2.5. That's all we have to say on that. But it's an absolute mortal lock, basically.
So from the panel, you are bullish on the Bucks.
Bullish on the Bucks.
Nailed it.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Dad joke.
Dad joke.
So let's go into the last matchup of the East. We're talking my Celtics, a house divided on the Dad Bod side versus the Brooklyn Nets. I'm sitting here with Sweet 17 championship behind me. I rub this for luck all the time, but I'm going to pass it to you, Shark, in sports. Please don't let me down.
Well, this is going to be a tough series, really tough series. We've talked about this all year. We were just talking about this before we came on the show. Brooklyn is incredibly hard to predict because Brooklyn has more inconsistency in their roster, game to game, week to week, month to month, than almost any team in the sport. James Harden, Ben Simmons in the locker room, Kyrie Irving at home, on the road, not playing, Kevin Durant injured, Bruce Bowen, G League, not Bruce Bowen, whatever his fucking name is. But G League comes up, Cam Thomas, whatever, I don't even know, but comes up, heat checks them. And you look at the Celtics on the other side of it, it's incredibly hard to predict too. We've talked about this day after day after day. Something flipped with this team midseason. Ime Udoka was giving all the good talking points early season when they were losing games to bottom feeders. He was saying, process this, process that, defense, ball movement, they have to buy in, blah, blah, blah. I said on record numerous times, I don't know if Jason Tatum has the mental makeup to be, his mentor, Kobe Bryant. Obviously, that's a big ask for any professional, no matter what their on-court skill level is, that's mental. But they have turned a corner. They're playing Game 7 defense every single game. Their ball movement is impeccable. Their role players, a lot of these guys, Peyton Pritchard and these boys, have been absolutely at the highest level of the type of guys you want to come off the bench. Great flow, first and second units. But again, it's hard to predict because Brooklyn Nets have arguably, if not definitively, the top player in the sport, Kevin Durant, who can take over every game. You saw it last year in the playoffs. He almost single-handedly took down the Milwaukee Bucks. If he hits that 3 versus the 2 by a half an inch, series is over. This is going to be tight. It's going to be tight every game. And I will say this on the record against the spread. These games are really contaminated, again, because the roster groups flip-flopped every game. But the most recent one on March 6, 2022 here on a weekend, final score Celtics 126-120. That line hovered anywhere between 3.5, 4 to 6 close for a push. Now you're opening in the same gym, same rosters at -4. Razor sharp stuff here to open this particular series. We will have more access 2, 3, 4, and 5. Final point on this. That is a great point in terms of the series in general. Game 1 is hard to cap. Game 7 is hard to cap. Game 1 is a total unknown, and Game 7 is one-off with mutual motivation for champions only. 2, 3, 4, and 5 is where you get bounce backs, travel, and you get the desperation you might need 0-2, 1-3, etc. Ronald Kabang, talk to him, and I got to take a sip of water.
Yeah. I think this one, like you mentioned, this is going to be a tough matchup because another thing to think about too is the fact that Ben Simmons is scheduled to show up in this round. If we look at the games throughout the season, Nets took the first matchup, dominated them. They still had Harden in the Nets here, and the Celtics, they didn't have Robert Williams, which is an issue now because they're not going to have. I don't think the Robert Williams is going to play this series. The next game, Celtics won by 35, but Boston had a full squad. Nets didn't have nearly anyone. Irving, Claxton, Harden, Durant, Harris, Aldridge were all out. They played a whole bunch of G League guys. Celtics win the next matchup. Boston with a full squad once again. Irving, KD were both out. No Harden either because this was after the trade deadline. So there were guys like Curry and Drummond who I think are really key players in this series specifically. They were still getting used to this lineup, this roster, and how the Nets play as far as just offensively. And then like you touched on, the Celtics winning by 6 in this last matchup. KD and Kyrie did both play this game, but then Tatum went off for 54, and the Nets still only lost by 6. And this is where Ben Simmons can really come in and make a name for himself. If he really has been so confident in the practice facility, coming into the playoffs, he's going to be able to shut Tatum down. If he can get back to how he was in Philly defensively, he's going to be able to do that pretty easily. And I feel like that's where the Nets can really take over the series in that aspect. And also, we were talking before the show, the fact that Robert Williams is not going to be on the team, not going to be in the lineup, and they're going to have Drummond, who I feel like was a really key player in this trade deadline for the Nets to be able to kind of go further in the playoffs. He's going to be able to dominate down low. I know. Guns was talking about Tease, but he's more of a perimeter player, not someone that's going to get some rebounds and bang down low. And at that point, you can have KD play up there in the center position because they're not going to have anyone banging down low. So I think at that point, I think Nets can really have the ability to be flexible and do what they want offensively. And to me, I think the Nets can. If I was going to be able to take one of the lower seeds to win the series, to me, it would be the Nets.
Great stuff. Odds, what do you think about that?
I'd like to challenge you to a Malort series bet.
Hey, I'm putting a challenge out to Malort.
We need Malort to respond.
We have pumped your product up that nobody does outside of Chicago. Why don't you give us a bottle and let us settle our bets that we've done since 2020, since when we were doing COVID? I guess now that we've basically given you all the breakdowns of the East, we've given you the breakdowns of the West. We still have a few more play-in games. Do you guys have any thoughts of the play-in games that are left? I know the Hawks are going to be playing the Cavs, it looks like. And then we still have a game up for grabs with the Spurs and Pelicans versus the Clippers. Any thoughts on those games? I'll pass to you, Shark.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I have to look at the numbers on those. Those are going to be numbers dependent. I think the Vegas average will tell us a good story. You do want to lean Hawks. I think the Hawks are just a higher class. We talked about this numerous times, but the Hawks did coast most of the season. They've obviously turned a massive corner. However, their road efficiency is not home efficiency at all. So that'll have to be numbers. But I do want to officially put on record here for this show, Dad Bodds podcast here, April 13th, 2022, 2 official plays. And it is -2.5 Milwaukee Bucks for the series. And I'm going to put a quarter unit on final tally 4-3 Philadelphia 76ers. As I said, Saturday or Sunday in 2 weeks, it's going down. They're angry and they're ready to dominate. That'll close it out for me. Ron will give an official play and then throw it to Ant. We'll close this one up.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, 1 second. For me, I don't. It's hard for me to do series games because I love playing the games game by game. At this point, as far as series goes, I mean, I'm gonna agree with you. Obviously, with the Bucks here, that was one play that I liked that you mentioned. Another thing is, what was the game that to reach seven games was the Raptors and the Raptors series. I think that one's gonna go 7 games. And the other one was if there was a team that was lower ranked to win the series, I think the Nets is going to win that one. That's another one that I really liked. I haven't looked at the odds really. I mean, like I mentioned, I just like playing game by game. But those were the 3 that I heard through this conversation here that I really like a lot.
Love it, love it, love it. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of ways. I mean, follow all of us on Twitter for free plays, free futures, free look aheads. I know Shark and Sports and UCAP are going to be doing that throughout as the lead in to these games kicking off Saturday and Sunday for a big NBA weekend. I think the only official on the podcast for me is I already nibbled on that Memphis Grizzlies 4-2 series victory at +360, available on DraftKings. I love that line. I'm going to shop around too, see if I can find it anywhere else any differently. But a good number, a strong number, and what I think is going to be a little bit of a back and forth series that ultimately the Grizzlies still control. Really looking forward to this Nets Celtics matchup, though. I think the Nets, it's do or die, right? You got a short window with KD and Kyrie and this squad. They're a deep team, but defensively, they really got to get it together, get some stops, tighten some things up. So I think game 1 might be telling. Simmons maybe back game 3 or some of the speculation and the reports. I'll be watching closely, but for now, 1 official. Keep looking online.
And I'm going Malort shot for the Celtics to win the series versus Brooklyn. And that's just a fan bet. But I think that's going to do it for the Dad Boss podcast. Thanks for joining us. Again, follow us all on Twitter. You can see the names on here at GunsPicks, at the _odds_fellows, at Sharkin Sports, and at YOU_capper on Twitter. Until next time for Dad Bods episode 80. I say good luck with your bets. Let's keep dancing. And as always, peace.